Have you ever just stopped and really thought about what makes you,
Yeah.
you? I mean, in this world where everything feels like it's shifting, especially identity, it gets complicated, doesn't it? What happens when who you feel you are inside doesn't quite match up with, the box society puts you in?
That's a really big question. And it's so relevant right now. It gets right to the heart of how we see ourselves, how we relate to each other. Identity isn't fixed, is it? It's always moving, evolving, especially with new science and different social views coming in.
Exactly. And that fluidity, that's what we're exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into something that really pushes those boundaries. Transracial identity.
Hmm.
Our mission here is to kind of cut through the noise, look at all sorts of perspectives, your academic papers, sure, but also YouTube talks, Reddit threads, personal stories. We want to figure out, does this create more division? Or does it maybe push our understanding of identity in new ways?
And the sources you've gathered are fantastic for this. A real mix. We've got the science that questions biological race, sociological studies, but then also these really raw, personal accounts from online spaces. It gives us a chance for a genuinely balanced look.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To really get transracial identity, we first need to tackle race itself.
Yeah.
Because the way most of us learned about it, it's kind of being taken apart now. The consensus in science, in social science, it's pretty clear. Race is mostly a social construct, not some fixed biological thing.
It's wild when you think about it, this modern idea of race, these neat biological doxes. It's actually pretty new in human history. It really kicked off during European exploration, colonialism, the scientific revolution, think 16th to 18th centuries. And crucially, it wasn't just neutral observation. These categories were often, well, engineered, used to justify power, hierarchies, and horrific things like slavery, justifying the subordination of African people. Race was basically invented to maintain power.
And the science, wow, especially recently, it just completely supports that view. Like the Human Genome Project, that was huge. It showed there's actually more genetic difference within racial groups than between them, which basically means there's no clear genetic line, no biological markers separating races. It just dismantles that whole idea of separate biological races.
Absolutely dismantles it. And you see concepts like clinal variation. That just means traits like skin color change gradually over geography. It's a spectrum, not distinct steps.
Like watching colors blend on a map rather than sharp borders.
Precisely. And then there's non-concordant variation. That means different traits, skin color, blood type, hair texture. They don't bundle together neatly. You can't predict one from the other reliably. It shows these racial traits aren't a package deal. Even back in the 70s, and there was a big survey in 85, lots of biologists, developmental psychologists were already saying, look, distinct biological races, not really a thing. Some even called race socially dysfunctional and biologically indefensible. Strong words.
It really is powerful. Knowing these ideas we hold are more history and society than biology. So if science is moving away from biology, why does race still feel so real day to day?
Because it is real in its consequences. It's maintained through social interactions, rules, politics. Think about racialization, how society creates and assigns meaning to racial categories, often based on power. Or like Omi and Winent's racial formation theory, race isn't static. It's constantly being shaped by social, economic, political forces.
But you do see shifts, right? Like the U.S. Census letting people pick multiple races since 2000. Even official systems are slowly starting to acknowledge it's more complex.
And that complexity, that understanding of race as this shifting social thing, brings us right to transracial identity. At its core, it's someone identifying with a race different from the one assigned at birth, usually based on ancestry or how society first saw them. Proponents frame it as this deep internal feeling, a sense that your true racial self is different.
This is where it gets really intense, though, isn't it? Because that idea, that internal sense of self, it immediately makes people think of transgender identity. There's a parallel drawn often.
There is. Both involve an internal feeling potentially mismatching the label given at birth, gender, or race. And in both cases, people might want to change their appearance or presentation to match that inner identity, to be seen authentically.
You see that argument a lot online, people advocating for it based on self-ID.
But, and this is a big but, applying that logic to race meets way more resistance than it does for gender. People like Simon Cushing talk about a moderate view, accepting transgender identity, but drawing a line at transracialism. Why? Well, a major point is that racial oppression is deeply intergenerational. It's tied to a shared history of injustice, trauma imposed on a group.
Like the Canadian Indian residential schools, that wasn't just individual. It was a systemic attack on a collective identity. The reparations reflect that shared history.
Exactly. That collective historical weight is different.
All right, so the question becomes, can someone claim that identity if they haven't lived that specific generation-spanning oppression? It's tough. Plus, there's the understanding of the basis, right? Gender identity is increasingly linked to, neurochemistry, biology, distinct from sex assigned at birth. But race, academically at least, is still primarily seen as a social construct.
That difference, internal blueprint versus societal system, makes the direct comparison tricky and fuels a lot of the pushback.
Okay, so given all that complexity, why do people identify as transracial? What are the motivations?
The sources show a few key themes. One is this really deep, almost spiritual connection or belonging with another culture or race. We saw that Reddit story. Someone bullied intensely, then found Japanese culture, adopted aesthetics, and finally felt accepted. For them, it was about finding a sense of self, a belonging they couldn't find elsewhere.
And then there's the other side. Sometimes it's about escaping something painful, escaping stereotypes, trauma tied to their assigned race. That Reddit story about the family member hating being black so intensely due to racism, attempting suicide, that's devastating.
Truly devastating. Or others wanting to distance themselves from negative stereotypes, like ghetto culture, even if those are harmful stereotypes themselves. Identifying as transracial can feel like a way to survive psychologically, to shed a heavy burden.
And underneath it all, there's just that basic human need to be seen, right, to be affirmed.
Absolutely. Which leads people to online communities, places like the dire racial community or RCTA safe community. They find others who feel the same, get support, share experiences without judgment. It provides validation they might not get offline.
But here's where the friction really happens, where individual identity bumps up against lived experience in power systems. Cultural appropriation is maybe the biggest criticism you hear.
And it's not just borrowing clothes, it's taking surface elements, style, language, maybe an accent, without understanding the deep meaning, the history, the struggles behind them. Critics say it turns culture into a costume, trivializes it, especially if the person doing it is from a dominant group.
Then there's the argument about trivializing oppression. This one cuts deep.
Yeah, the idea is that choosing a racial identity, especially if you're white, choosing a marginalized identity, undermines the real daily struggles of those born into it. You can't truly know that identity without living the systemic discrimination.
The Rachel Dolezal case is the classic example here, isn't it? A white woman presenting as black. Many felt she wasn't just appropriating, but taking opportunities from black women, deceiving people.
Right. And that quote, Michael Brown couldn't be transracial. It's stark. It highlights that for many, race isn't a choice. It's imposed with often brutal consequences.
And that ties into white privilege, too.
Exactly. The criticism is a white person identifying as, say, black can theoretically step back into whiteness if things get tough. They have that escape hatch, that privilege, which someone born black doesn't have. Their identity exploration is seen as a kind of luxury afforded by privilege.
Does this connect to things like colorism as well?
It can, yes. Colorism discrimination based on skin tone within a group, often favoring lighter skin, is a deep issue. When people make physical changes, skin lightening or darkening, surgery, to match a chosen race, critics argue it can unintentionally reinforce those harmful beauty standards rooted in racism.
What about the impact on, group solidarity, social justice movements?
That's another big concern. If race becomes purely individual, purely fluid, does it weaken the collective action needed to fight systemic racism? Could it dilute the meaning of Black History Month, for instance? Or arguments for reparations, which are based on that shared imposed history of oppression? If identity is totally personal, what happens to collective claims for justice?
We've definitely seen cases blow up publicly and bring all this out.
For sure. Rachel Dolezal, we mentioned, huge debate starter. Ollie London, with surgeries to look Korean, sparked conversations about fetishization, commodifying culture. Martina Big, the German model with extreme modifications to appear black, raised all sorts of ethical questions about authenticity and physical alteration.
And then, adding another layer of complexity, there's the case of Donna Briggs.
Right. Her story is fascinating because it kind of flips the script, but raises equally challenging questions. Here you have a black woman whose personal journey and choices led to her being perceived by others as white.
So it's not just about moving into a marginalized identity, but also how society reacts when someone seems to move out of one based on self-identification or perception.
Exactly. It forces us to confront whether our assumptions about race are rigid in both directions. Briggs's case highlights society's struggle when someone's identity doesn't fit the expected narrative, whichever way the perceived shift occurs.
It shows just how deeply ingrained these categories are, and how uncomfortable society gets when they're challenged from any angle. Dolezal, London, Briggs, they all expose that fundamental discomfort.
And this drive to align the inside with the outside, or perceived outside, leads some to practices like RCTA racial cultural transference adoption. This can involve anything from hair dye and makeup, tanning, all the way to cosmetic surgery. It really highlights the intense disconnect some feel, pushing them to significant lengths to achieve that congruence.
Looking ahead, technology could make this even wilder, couldn't it? Almost sci-fi.
Potentially, yes. Imagine genome editing becoming sophisticated enough to change traits we associate with race, skin color, hair texture.
Whoa, the ethical questions are massive. Access, new kinds of inequality.
And what does identity even mean if you can literally rewrite your physical self? It's profound.
And even now, think about virtual reality, AI avatars.
Right, we can already be someone else online. It blurs the lines between the physical self and the presented self. The true self gets slippery.
We are definitely in uncharted waters here. No easy answers anywhere.
So what's the takeaway from all this? This deep dive shows it's just incredibly complex, nuanced, always evolving. Individual feelings meet collective history. Science meets social reality.
And maybe the most important thing is empathy. Being open-minded,
Yeah.
willing to listen, even when it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely. We need spaces for honest, respectful conversation. And remember, behind the debates, the theories, the controversies, these are real people with real lives, real feelings looking for belonging. Their journeys, however we feel about them, force us all to think harder about who we are.
Okay, so let's recap. Race, largely social but with real impact. Identity, fluid, challenging old boxes. Transracial identity. Controversial, yes, but pushes us to examine core beliefs about self, belonging, authenticity.
And we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. If technology reached a point where changing physical racial traits was easy, seamless, through gene editing or whatever, would that create a more just world? Or could it lead to totally new kinds of divisions, new inequalities we haven't even conceived of yet?
Something to really think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into identity. Keep exploring, keep questioning. We'll be back to unpack more complex topics with you.